football player, a former football player, does not make me any different. Being a football player, a former football player, does not make me any different than anybody else. It doesn't matter. Mental illness, depression is real.
My parents and family and friends didn't understand at first. I wish someone would have said, you know, like, it's okay to feel this way.
The people that we get are people who have joined the military, who have fought, bled, and sacrificed a lot for their country. Some of the bravest people I've ever met in my entire life have suffered from mental illness.
I was very naive. I didn't realize, you know, somebody like me could get it, and had been living with it my entire life, and I had no idea what it was.
I would hope someone would have said, "Are you okay?" and being able to really discuss it and talk about it.
Those few people who are the closest to you, family, friends, clergy, other people in other organizations in your community, those are the people who are your lifeline.
You're not crazy, you're ill. And when you're ill, you need help.
It's perfectly normal and okay to get help. There's nothing wrong with you as a person.
Just be there for them. I think it's the biggest thing. Just be there for them and know that they have someone they can talk to, because mental illness is lonely. Like, you always feel alone. You feel like no one else knows exactly what you're going through.
And if you stay on the path of recovery and after treatment, things will get better and your life will change.
I've been to the deepest hole, the darkest place on this earth, and I came out of it.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's not you.
It's okay.
It'll be okay.
Hello everybody, my name is Jacci Kameri, and I'll start with a little bit of my background and where that video originated from. I fell ill in 2012, and I had an out-of-body experience. It was a spiritual experience for me. A good Samaritan saw me and called for help, and I was taken to different psychiatric hospitals, and eventually ended up in the state mental hospital. I faced a lot of adversity, police brutality. I was shackled up, my hands and my legs, and really roughed up. But something deeper was going on inside, and so I learned how to fight back, and I learned eventually how to speak up. I've been living with a condition that I've been hiding my entire life, and it finally just exploded because I never knew what it was. Growing up in Africa, we don't have a lot of medical doctors. When we get sick, you visit the traditional healer and they give you some conclusions and you take that. So coming from that kind of background to learning that you have a disability, it was like just too much. And so I ran away from all my doctors, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the therapists. It was too much. And I used more of a holistic approach towards learning what my triggers are, trying to identify what my symptoms are. So I became my own advocate and I became my own doctor. And what I specialized in was learning the insanity part of my illness. And I took a long time to like really grasp it together and like understand like how these things like interconnect each other, because the next year I ended up back in the same situation. I had another spiritual out-of-body experience, and I was back in the mental hospital again, back to the state mental hospital again, faced with police brutality all over again. And so that happened for like about 3 years, and that's what eventually gave me the courage to like look outside the little support network that I had built and look for help outside of that. I joined a couple of organizations, and one of them is Pathway to Hope. They elected me to be on the board member. And then a few months later, I joined NAMI, which is National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's the largest grassroots organization that advocates for the rights of individuals and families. And so I've served on the county board. I do serve on the state board as well as on the Consumer Council, which is the arm that advocates for the rights of individuals with mental illness. And so Baraka Village, the vision was actually realized during like my first psychiatric episode. And so Baraka really is a blessing, and I struggled with this thing like my whole life because I couldn't differentiate between the gift and the curse. And for a long time I thought I was cursed, which is why I never talked about it. And that is why for me, like the whole traditional element of understanding your own heritage, understanding like the spiritual traditions that we have as Africans, they are so, so powerful. In the words of Jomo Kenyatta, late Kenyan first president, he said something that is very, very powerful. He said, when the missionaries came, we had the land and they had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. When we opened our eyes, they had the land and we had the Bible. So that basically means, you know, we've pretty much forgotten about our own African spirituality. We've tossed it aside. We don't, you know, we've looked down on a lot of things that we can learn from these traditional healers. In the state that I was in, I needed a traditional healer to like understand me. I was interacting with my ancestors. I'm like, why do they keep coming to me? Why can't you look for somebody else? Because they've been coming to me for a long time. And I did some research and I backtracked into my own family, and I found out that my great-great-great-granddad was actually a traditional healer. And there's a book that's published in the Kenyan Museum. One of our clansmen actually put it together. It's called Kameriwa Waiderero. And that basically shows like his life as a shaman. I never knew any of this stuff before until I got sick, and I'm digging back and I'm like, I want to learn all this stuff. And so when you piece all these things together, you realize there's a part of it that is an illness, but there's also a part of it that is a gift. And unfortunately, we live in a society where we medicate more than actually trying to figure out like where exactly is all this stuff coming from, because we don't teach cultural competence, which is that missing element that kind of binds us all together between the care providers, the community, our spiritual leaders, the workplace, where we spend all this time together interacting, but yet we're still having trouble interacting and really getting to understand each other. And so for me, that is something that is very crucial in like moving forward and in like growing. When I launched Baraka Village last year at Harvard, it was because I had reached a point in my life where I was unemployable. I can't keep a job anymore. I can't focus at work. My brain overdeveloped, and I can't do simple tasks. And sometimes I have trouble just after 4 hours. I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this no more. You know, I can't look at a spreadsheet anymore. But here I am. I've built up a whole profession working within the legal industry with attorneys, engineers, IT teams, and I can't find a job anymore. And so I decided to combine my personal life with my professional life, as well as the advocacy work that I have done. And that's how Baraka Village came to be formed. And we're still facing a lot of challenges. And it's one of the things, you know, that there's a lot of people like me that don't even know that they have a mental illness walking around. We have a lot of young soldiers in the African community now that have joined the military with no proper, you know, therapy prior to joining. And when they come back, they don't know how to interact into the community. They come back, their friends have all graduated, they have big jobs, and they feel like they're starting all over again. So we've had a lot of PTSD deaths within the community, and this is something that we really need to like really take a good look into, because it affects all of us. I don't want to be the person that gets that call because there's a crisis, from the spiritual leader, but we're not talking about this on a constant basis. We're not forming support groups. I have to go to an outside community to get support for something that they probably don't even understand. Why don't we have support groups for ourselves? We need to ask ourselves that question, because that's where we need to start. We need to get people involved. We need to get people engaged so that we can communicate. We can talk about these things. Seeing ancestors is not uncommon in African traditions. What did you do with our spirituality? Spirituality doesn't just disappear. We're all spiritual beings first. And so when we understand that aspect of it and that element of it, we need to like really capitalize on that so that we can build a healthier population and we can also be able to like move forward. Being treated as an outcast is not a good thing. When we identify ourselves in the community and say like, I have a mental illness, everybody's like, woo, you know? It shouldn't have to be like that. In Africa, you know, we still have that old mental asylum still, you know, active, and it's like people being tied and chained to like objects or like trees and left there to die because society doesn't view them as a productive member of society. And I struggled with that for a long time because I didn't even know I could build a future. I thought my future was dead. But something told me to like just keep trying and keep trying. And that's eventually what got me out of my own comfort zone. And so in order for us to move forward, to get young people engaged, the older generation engaged as well, we all need to work together. We need to have more inclusion in everything that we do with our policymakers, with our advocates, the people that's responsible for making those kinds of key decisions within our community. We need to all work together. I'd like to thank Dr. Ngwa and Lydia. I wasn't going to come this year. I was in such a bad place. But they kept calling me and texting me, and emailing me, and it's like, Jackie, you have to come. And I am so glad that I came this year because all the things that I've been struggling with are the things that all the professionals have spoken about too between Friday and today. Those are the things that I've had to figure out for myself. If we had this a few years back, I probably would not have gone back to the hospital a second time because the information would have been readily available, but it's not. So we're struggling with like too much information on coming from the Western culture, and then on the African culture, there's no information. How do we break down things like psychosis? I had to explain to my friends because they couldn't understand all this medical terminologies just like I never could. What is psychosis? You know, in simple terms, we have three minds: the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious, and they all work together for a healthy well-being. When they disintegrate and stop communicating to each other, that's when you get into psychosis. In Swahili, we say kichwa kinaruka, means like your mind jumps. If someone had told me that in the beginning, I would know what I was dealing with. It took me more than 3 years to figure that out. And that should have to be, you know, like the case. And that's why I think a lot of people of color don't seek medical help because there's such a big gap in like how we understand these things. You know, most Africans that speak more than 2 languages, we're very multilingual. All the information that is there, all the programs that are there, they're designed for people who only speak 1 or 2 languages. The whole cultural aspect is completely left out. We need to create our own programs by our own people, with our own medical professionals and practitioners, our educators, our professors, our spiritual leaders, and then we need to get out in the community and share that information, break it down, so that the average person can get it. There's no point of fighting, you know, creating more and more policies when the person that needs the help doesn't understand anything. And I think that's my challenge to everybody in this room is like, how can we move forward with that? What can we do? What can we contribute? How do we come together and form collaborations that will help people move forward? I think I'm over top, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacci. I'm sorry, it's not easy for me to